Hola, este video es un repaso de los tiempos verbales del indicativo. This video is a review of the Spanish indicative verb tenses. Most of this video will be in English just to explain the grammar terms, the verb tenses in English versus Spanish. Before we look at the different verb tenses, it's important to realize that there are three moods in Spanish. There's the indicative, the subjunctive, and the imperative moods. Moods are essentially just an approach to the way that the language is used. The indicative is for things that are seen as reality. They're true. The subjunctive is for things that you're expressing some kind of emotion or doubt or denial or a recommendation, or if you're making some kind of judgment or there's conditions about what you're saying. We're not going to look at the subjunctive much today, but it's important just to realize that that's a mood. Within the indicative and the subjunctive, they each have their own verb tenses. And then the other mood is the imperative, which is when we make a command. Sit down, stand up, siéntate, párate. Those are examples of commands. Here we have an overview, a list of the indicative and the subjunctive verb tenses. You can see there are a lot more in the in the indicative than there are in the subjunctive. Today we're not going to look at the subjunctive like I mentioned, but we will look at the indicative. And here's a list, but we're going to enter into these one by one on a timeline. We're going to start with the present. An example of the presente in Español es yo como manzanas todos los días. I eat, I said manzanas here, but it says bananas here. Well, I eat bananas or eat apples every day. It should be apples, but not bananas, but I eat them every day. We're looking at the verb tense. Or you could also say I do eat bananas every day to affirm. The difficulty is in the interpretation from Spanish to English. Como can mean I eat or I do eat, or it can even mean I am eating. But that's not to be confused with the other verb tense, which is the presente progresivo. Estoy comiendo una manzana ahora mismo. I am eating an apple right now. This estoy comiendo is the present progressive, and that's focusing on the action is actually in progress right now. Excuse me. Next, we have the present perfect. A presente perfecto is sometimes known as a pretérito perfecto. You'll see each of these names used interchangeably sometimes. Typically it's been known as a pretérito perfecto, but now because in English it's known as a present perfect, you'll see a presente perfecto. An example is yo he comido muchas manzanas durante mi vida. So this is the timeline of my life. Here I am now, and it's up to this point in my life. I have eaten. So he comido. The perfect tenses in Spanish are composed of two different verbs. There's the helping verb and there's the participle. And the helping verb is from the verb haber. And then we've got the past participle here. And that's your ido with er and ir verbs, and ado will come with the ar verbs. So I have eaten. So yo he is I have, and eaten is comido. So it's what I've done up to this point in my life. He comido. I have eaten many apples in my life. And it includes the present. It's not just ends here. Now we're going to look at the future tense. There's the futuro simple, which is the future tense. Yo comeré una pizza mañana. I will eat a pizza tomorrow. That's the point in the future. I will do it tomorrow. It's comeré. There's a helping verb in English, but in Spanish there's no helping verb as comeré. The a at the end of the infinitive makes it the future tense. I will do this. In the future, we've also got the future perfect. The future perfect implies that there's a period in the future and that something will have happened by that point. So, futuro perfecto. Yo ya habré comido la cena a las 10 esta noche. So, I will have already eaten dinner at 10 o'clock tonight. So, here's 10, and this will have happened by this point in the future. So, again, here's a perfect tense. So, it's got the helping verb haber with the participio de pasado with the past participle. So will have eaten. So yeah, it's the already in there. That's the future perfect. Now we're going to step back in time and we're going to look at the past tense. There are a couple of different past tenses in Spanish. The first is the pretérito. The pretérito are for actions that happen one time or a specific number of times. The simplest translation, for example, is yo comí un bistec ayer. I ate a steak yesterday. Happened one time, one point in the past. We use the preterite tense, the pretérito. Next, we've got the imperfect tense. The imperfect tense sounds like yo comía hamburguesas todos los viernes cuando era joven. So it's an action that was repeated over and over. By using the imperfect, you imply that it happened more than once. So I used to eat hamburgers every Friday when I was young. Cuando era joven, era is another example of the imperfect. We also use the imperfect tense when we're describing something in the past, when you're giving details, or when it wasn't a specific action, when it's a condition or a situation. So this era is from the verb ser. It's also a description, another use of the imperfect. So yo comía can mean I used to eat them. It can also be interpreted depending on the context. Here's another example. Yo comí una hamburguesa cuando tú me llamaste. I was eating a hamburger when you called me. So I was eating a hamburger was in progress when, bam, you called me. You called me is the preterite tense because it was a specific action. Llamaste is the preterite tense, and the I was eating a hamburger is what was happening. That's the imperfect tense. Next, we have the pluscuamperfecto. Again, notice it's perfecto, so it's a perfect tense, which means that it's got the helping verb haber with the past participle comido. So yo ya había comido cuando llegaste a mi casa. So this is a point in the past. You arrived at my house, and I had already done this before that happened. So ya había comido cuando llegaste a mi casa. That's what had happened by a certain point in the past. So that's the pluperfect in English. Yo ya había comido cuando llegaste a mi casa. I had already eaten when you arrived at my house. So that's the pluscuamperfecto. And with that, we have seen all of the indicative verb tenses that fit on a timeline. There are two others that don't fit on the timeline, which I just realized there's no slide for. Those are the conditional and the conditional perfect. The conditional is when you would say, yo comería, I would eat. Or you could say, here's an example of the conditional, practicaría. You put the ia on the end. Conditional is what you would do. I would practice. I would eat. How would we say that? That would be comería. Comería is the conditional. And the conditional perfect, oh look, it's a perfect tense. So it's got the helping verb haber with the past participle. So habría practicado. I would, because it's the conditional, would, perfect is have, I would have, and then whatever your verb is. In this case, habría practicado, I would have practiced. How would you say that with comer? I would have, yo habría comido. So that's the conditional perfect. And with that, we have seen all of our indicative verb tenses. I hope this has been helpful to see them all on this timeline here. Let's see an overview of them one more time. It kind of looks overwhelming, but it's not so much if you look at the individual uses of each verb tense. I hope that was helpful. Buena suerte. Good luck applying these and using them because they're all very helpful.